He shoved my graduation cake off the table. It hit the concrete with a wet smack, frosting exploding everywhere, and my 10-year-old nephew Liam stood there grinning like he'd just won a prize. "Eat it off the ground," he shouted, pointing at me while the entire backyard erupted in laughter. Not awkward laughter. Not uncomfortable, "oh no, that went too far" laughter. Real, genuine, belly-deep laughter from every single member of my family. My mother was wiping tears from her eyes. My sister Amanda had her phone out recording it, already thinking about which group chat would get this gem first. Uncle Rick was slapping his knee. Aunt Becky's shoulders shook as she tried to cover her mouth. Even my dad, who never laughed at anything, had this satisfied smirk on his face. I stood there holding a cake knife, watching purple frosting spell out "Congrats, Daisy" smear across the patio, and something inside me just stopped. Not broke. Stopped. Like a machine that finally realized it was working for free. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. I'd driven 4 hours from Seattle that morning. Left at 6 a.m. because Mom texted 3 times reminding me not to be late. I wore the dress Amanda once said made me look almost pretty. I brought a gift for Liam. I practiced what I'd say if anyone asked about my biomedical engineering degree, about graduating summa cum laude, about the 4 years I'd spent working full-time while taking night classes. But no one asked. Not one person. When I walked through the gate at noon, Amanda was describing her Cabo vacation to an audience of 15 people hanging on her every word. My graduation cake sat at the edge of the dessert table, shoved aside to make room for the tres leches cake she'd brought back from Mexico. No one had cut mine. No one mentioned it. Mom called out, "You're finally here," but didn't get up. Just pointed to an empty chair at the far end where the sun was hitting hardest. I sat down and became invisible. 30 minutes passed. Amanda showed photos. Everyone leaned in. When I tried to look, my cousin Sarah physically blocked me with her body. I mentioned finishing my finals. Mom said, "That's nice, honey," in that voice that means she wasn't listening, then immediately asked Amanda about resort breakfast options. Then Liam walked up to me. "Aunt Daisy, Mom says you're the boring one." Loud enough for everyone to hear. They laughed then too. I smiled. Stayed quiet. Like I always did. But then he went for the cake, and I watched it happen in slow motion, my brain screaming at my body to move but nothing working fast enough. And now here we were. Cake on the ground. Family howling with laughter. Me standing there realizing that love isn't supposed to sound like this. I set the knife down, picked up my purse, and walked toward the gate. "Daisy, where are you going?" Mom called out, still laughing, like I was being dramatic over nothing. I didn't answer. Didn't turn around. Didn't explain. Just kept walking while they laughed harder, probably at how sensitive I was being, how I couldn't take a joke, classic Daisy ruining the fun. I got in my car and drove. For hours back to Seattle in complete silence, too numb to cry, too clear-headed to doubt what I'd just seen. I got home around 9 p.m., collapsed on my couch in the dark, and that's when my phone buzzed. "Mom," in the family group chat. "We've chosen to sever all contact with you." The message said, "Your negativity is toxic to this family. Stay away from us forever." I watched Amanda's name pop up underneath with a heart reaction. A thumbs up. Public approval of my exile. And instead of feeling hurt, instead of that desperate need to apologize and fix it and make myself smaller so they'd love me again, I felt something else. Clarity. I opened my banking app. The app I'd been avoiding for months because I knew what was there and didn't want to face it. But I was facing it now. There it was. First of every month, like clockwork. Mortgage payment for my parents' house. $1,500. Car payment for Amanda's SUV. $450. All coming out of my account. All in my name. All from documents I'd signed 3 years ago when they said they needed help, just temporarily, while Dad's business recovered. 37 months later, temporary was still going strong. I did the math. Nearly $70,000. My money. While I lived in a studio apartment and ate ramen and told myself I was being responsible, being a good daughter, helping family like you're supposed to. They kept their house. Amanda drove a luxury SUV. And I paid for it while they laughed at cake smeared across concrete. I opened the group chat and typed one sentence. "I'm removing my name from every loan tomorrow." Sent. Phone face down on the coffee table. And then I sat in the dark and waited. Because I knew what was coming. I knew that within hours, maybe minutes, that group chat was going to explode. I knew the missed calls would start stacking up. I knew the guilt trips and the accusations and the "how could you do this to family" messages would flood in. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what they'd never understood about quiet, boring, sensitive Daisy, who always smiled and stayed silent and paid their bills without complaint. I'd been keeping track. Every payment. Every date. Every email where they promised it was temporary. Every text where Mom said, "You're such a blessing," while my account drained. Every conversation where Amanda bragged about her vacation while I calculated if I could afford groceries that week. I had records. I had documentation. I had 3 years of evidence that I'd been their personal ATM machine while they treated me like a punchline. And tomorrow morning, I had an appointment at the bank with Mr. Diaz, who'd already reviewed my case and confirmed I could legally remove myself from every single loan. They thought kicking me out of the family was punishment. They thought I'd come crawling back, apologizing, begging to be let back into their good graces. They didn't realize they'd just set me free. My phone started buzzing. One notification. Then another. Then 5 more in rapid succession. The group chat was waking up. I let it buzz. Let them panic. Let them realize what they'd done. Because I'd spent 28 years being the good daughter, the responsible one, the boring one who paid the bills and took the jokes and smiled through the humiliation. And I was done. Tomorrow, I'd sign papers. I'd cut every legal tie. I'd stop paying for people who laughed when my cake hit the floor. Tonight, I sat in the dark and felt lighter than I had in years. This was the beginning. Not the end. The beginning. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls. The group chat had exploded with over 200 messages, and my phone was physically hot from the constant notifications buzzing through. I didn't open a single message. Didn't listen to a single voicemail. I got up, showered, made coffee, and got dressed like this was any other Tuesday. Except it wasn't. This was the Tuesday I stopped being their ATM machine. I had an appointment at First National Bank at 9 a.m., and I arrived 5 minutes early. Mr. Diaz was already waiting in his office, a man in his mid-50s with silver hair and kind eyes that didn't judge. He'd reviewed everything I'd sent over the weekend, all the loan documents and payment histories I'd been quietly collecting for months, without really knowing why. Now I knew why. "Ms. Wilson, I've gone through all 3 loans," he said, gesturing to the papers spread across his desk. "You're listed as primary cosigner on the mortgage, the vehicle loan, and a personal loan I'm guessing you forgot about." I had forgotten about that third one. My father had called 2 years ago, desperate, needing money for some business opportunity that never materialized. $20,000 with my name guaranteeing it. The paperwork took less than 30 minutes. Mr. Diaz explained that as cosigner, I had every legal right to remove myself, especially given that I'd been making 90% of the payments for 37 consecutive months. The bank would notify the primary borrowers within 24 hours, and they'd have 72 hours to refinance without my name or face default. Each signature felt like freedom. Each initial was a severed chain. The mortgage that kept my parents in their 4-bedroom house while I lived in a studio apartment. Amanda's luxury SUV that cost more per month than my rent. Dad's failed business loan that I'd been quietly covering while he told everyone at family gatherings that he was self-made. My hand didn't shake once. When I walked out of that bank at 9:45 a.m., the Seattle sky was gray and drizzling, but I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight that had been pressing on my chest since I was old enough to understand that love in my family came with invoices attached was finally lifting. My phone was still having a meltdown in my purse. I sat in my car in the parking lot and finally looked at the messages. The guilt trips were predictable. Mom asking how I could do this to them, Uncle Rick calling me selfish, Aunt Becky saying family forgives so why couldn't I, Cousin Sarah insisting they were, just laughing, and I was being too sensitive like always. But it was Amanda's message that made something hot and sharp twist in my chest. She'd written that I owed them everything, that they'd raised me and fed me and clothed me, that my little degree didn't make me better than them, that I'd be nothing without this family. I typed one message to the entire group chat and hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response was simple. I'd paid $68,000 toward loans that weren't mine while they laughed at cake smeared on concrete. I didn't owe them anything anymore. I was done. Then I muted the entire conversation and drove to work. At the lab, my colleague Jennifer noticed something different about me immediately. She said I seemed lighter, and I realized I was actually smiling without forcing it. For 8 hours, I lost myself in cell cultures and data analysis and forgot that my entire family was probably combusting in real time. That evening, I did something radical. I ordered Thai food from the expensive place downtown, the one with the good curry that cost $23 for a single entree. For 3 years, I'd been living on dollar menu items and ramen, telling myself I was being responsible while my bank account drained into my family's pockets every month. I sat on my couch eating pad thai straight from the container, watching Netflix and feeling that constant knot of anxiety in my stomach finally start to unravel. One call came through from an unknown number that night. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Dad, calling from someone else's phone because I'd stopped answering his number days ago. His voice sounded tired and defeated in a way I'd never heard before. He said they needed to talk about this, that I was going to ruin them, that they'd lose the house and Amanda's car and everything. I told him the paperwork was already submitted. It was done. There was long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then he said something that should have broken my heart, but instead just made me angry. He said it was just a joke. I told him no, it wasn't a joke. It was a pattern that had been going on my entire life, and I wasn't part of it anymore. I hung up, blocked that number too, and went back to my curry. The bank would send official notices the next day, 24 hours exactly from when I'd signed those papers. That's when my family would realize this wasn't an empty threat or an emotional outburst they could guilt me out of. This was legal, binding, and irreversible. I'd cut every financial tie, severed every obligation. And for the first time in 28 years, I'd chosen myself over them. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No anxiety dreams about missed payments. No nightmares about disappointing people who were never going to be proud of me anyway. Just deep, dreamless sleep. The kind that comes when you finally stop carrying weight that was never yours to carry in the first place. The next afternoon, the bank sent the notices. And that's when my family realized I wasn't coming back. They showed up at my apartment 3 days later. I was making dinner, just simple pasta and vegetables, listening to music and actually enjoying my Friday evening for the first time in forever when the pounding started. Not knocking. Pounding. Like someone was trying to break through the door with their fists. I looked through the peephole and saw them. Mom, Amanda, and surprisingly, Dad, who never got involved in confrontations. Mom's face was red and twisted with rage. Amanda was already filming on her phone, probably planning to post this as evidence of my cruelty. I didn't open the door. Instead, I pulled out my own phone and started recording. Daisy, open this door right now. Mom screamed, her voice shrill enough that I knew my neighbors could hear. We need to talk about what you've done. You've destroyed this family. Amanda shouted, banging harder. The bank is taking everything. Mom and Dad are losing their house because of you. I stood on the